Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back should be considered high art and ought to be revered as, perhaps, one of the greatest pieces of cultural achievement mankind has ever known. I mean, what's the competition here? The pyramids? It's a dusty triangle filled with dead rich people. Big whoop. Plus, they were built by slaves. Crash 2 certainly gets a clean bill of health in that regard. I think, anyway. But seriously, folks, take something like The Dark Knight. Coming off the heels of a solid first entry that establishes this new Batman mythos of the 21st century, Chris Nolan wanted to expand on that mythos to create something truly epic in scope. The man employed the use of IMAX technology for certain scenes in this next outing, making The Dark Knight the first narrative blockbuster to employ such technology. It definitely shows, and The Dark Knight remains one of the most impactful films of the new millennium because of the emotion that the technology was used to help deliver. And before anyone asks, no, I did not learn that in film school. I promise you, I learned absolutely nothing there. Let me illustrate the comparison by telling you the story of Crash Bandicoot and the sensibilities that inspired this polygonal protagonist. We begin with Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin, the sum total of Naughty Dog in summer 1994. With 3D technology sweeping the industry, our dynamic duo decided to set their sights on transforming their favorite genre, the mascot platformer. They were aiming to give Sony a mascot that could go spit in the face of that Italian acrobat and his demonic blue id, the heavyweights of the genre. But there was also a more specific influence in the form of Donkey Kong Country, and we'll investigate how that informed the level design of Crash specifically. Along the way, programmer Dave Baggett and recurring character in video game history Mark Cerny joined the team, and these four became the principal architects behind this manic marsupial. There's a quote I got from Andy Gavin's blog that really succinctly summarizes the artistic mission statement behind our bombastic Bandicoot. It's also where I got 90% of the information for this part, so if you're interested, there's a wealth of Crash trivia just a Google search away. Anyway, Mr. Gavin says, Willy, an early name for Crash, was to be, in our minds, a game that tried to combine the gameplay of Mario or Donkey Kong Country with the animation and cartoon sensibility of a Looney Tunes or Tex Avery cartoon. Now listen, the Looney Tunes are the funniest creations in human history, so applying some of that animated magic to a video game tickles my fancy something fierce. They went all out with the idea too, scoring Hollywood concept artist Charles Zambellis on characters and Joe Pearson on backgrounds. And it took some back-breaking technical work to get that zany animated look on a PlayStation game. Blending Hollywood techniques and classic animation sensibilities into Crash Bandicoot and translating them into living, moving, playable cartoons was essential to the feel of the piece, and untold hours of programming work went in to pull this off. They were coding out on the frontier, basically. I mean, who had attempted something like this before? And it was integral they get the technical foundations right. As Jason Rubin says, quote, "The secret to Crash's success was its art, and the secret to its art was its programming." The development of Crash 2, as I understand it, was mostly a refinement of what worked from the original. For example, the engine powering Crash 2 is the Ghoul 2, developed in-house as a successor to the Ghoul engine used in Crash 1. They were now getting twice the polygons and 10 times the animation frames from Ghoul original. You can imagine how this went a ways to enhance the delivery of a franchise whose secret ingredient was its art and animation. I want to explore how that vision was expressed the first go-around, but I do this to emphasize all the ways the team improved with the second stab, so as to really solidify my case that Crash 2 is an artistic achievement in all the ways it was able to deliver on such a captivating narrative. You're telling me I get to play as a forgotten character from Who Framed Roger Rabbit with a mischievous heart and more wacky death animations than ever before seen in the virtual world? Well, by God, aside from euthanasia, that's all I've ever wanted. Crash, you're calling my name, buddy. Lead me on an adventure that expresses a vision so expertly realized by a team of artists willing to play within a new and unexplored technical landscape to deliver unto us an animated character we can truly inhabit as our own. I've always felt some personal identification with characters like Daffy Duck, so I'm excited to live out my fantasy of being a true Looney Tune. Normally I do this by corrupting symbols of virtue to prove an anarchistic point about the hopelessness of society. So today we'll be enacting my dream in a way that is substantially less entertaining to me personally, but at least it doesn't end with me getting punched by a guy gargling marbles. I don't want to reduce the original Crash Bandicoot to just a footnote in this story, so let's take a quick gander at how the boys over at Naughty Dog were able to realize their masterpiece on the first swing. The series didn't exactly emerge fully formed, but it certainly made a lasting first impression. In 1996, I think it's safe to say no other game looked like this. Extrapolating on the 2D action of Donkey Kong Country, Crash 1 is a series of linear hallways that have the titular Bandicoot moving left, right, up, and down, spinning and jumping his way through tight, tough-as-nails platforming. Leave the title screen lingering long enough and you'll get the most story Crash Bandicoot has on offer. A cutscene plays, beginning with a pan in a Cortex castle, where the nefarious Dr. Neo Cortex is using his inventions to bioengineer an army of mutated marsupials to lead him to world domination. His assistant, Nitrous Brio, is wary of using the experimental vortex technology on this Bandicoot they found, but Cortex won't hear it. This bites Dr. Cortex in the ass, however, as he inadvertently birthed the specter of insanity that is destined to haunt him to the end of his days. Crash escapes the castle, and since he still needs a general for his army, Cortex turns to his other mutated Bandicoot captive, a lady named Tawna who Crash has developed a liking to. Would you believe that she's widely considered to be one of the first sex symbols in gaming? Anyway, Crash washes up on Insanity Beach, and he's got to hop and spin his way back up to Cortex Castle to rescue his love interest who, spoiler alert, was basically stuffed down a garbage disposal after this installment. If anything about this game looks primitive, I think it's only in comparison to the sequels. If I saw these graphics back in '96, I'd say, wow, I'm inside my dad's balls. You can clearly see the vision at work here, and it feels like technical limitations get them just shy of a bullseye. Still, the graphics as a whole are absolutely stellar, and to illustrate my point, take a look at these backgrounds. They're the first thing that stood out to me because of their intricacy, but there's loving detail all over these levels, especially considering this was a first stab at a 3D game and a new engine. Loving detail is brushed from top to bottom of this package. Even the vertices on Crash's model were hand-stitched together by Jason Rubin himself. But then there's little things, like Crash having special death animations is cool and all, but there's only a select few of them. And the main man himself lacks a fluidity in his animation and movement that really brings out the artificiality of that orange triangle. These are things that stand out because of how incredible the game's presentation is overall. Again, it's just off the mark, just in need of some tweaks and additions, and Crash has got the potential to hit the big leagues and really feel like a playable Warner Brothers cartoon. Speaking of things that need tweaking, the secret to Crash's success may have been its art, but there was still a game you had to play to experience any of that. It's fine. Under certain conditions. Firstly, what we have here is a clear interpretation of a 2D Donkey Kong level given a Z-axis. Where Mario went with large open levels because the N64 carts had about as much memory as my poor dementia-ridden Pap, Crash was afforded what I think is a more expected route for these mascot platformers in their transition to 3D. This is definitely closer to what I'd picture in my head if you told me to imagine a polygonal version of this gameplay. But there's also demons up there, so, you know. If you're just playing this cover to cover, then you've got a game that's definitely too hard for its own good and walks a balancing act between challenging but fair and utterly frustrating. The level design is the main culprit here. Crash does not have very precise movement because of his buttery feet and fixed jump arc, which makes the tight platforming the game asks of you increasingly upsetting. It really bogs the game down for me how much they expect of you with the control on offer. It's still plenty beatable, but there just never seemed to be a moment where the level design really clicked for me, where the challenge seemed to be genuinely elevating the experience. A number of these levels are way too long. Sunset Vista is a name my therapist would hear a lot if he would ever return my calls. What brings you in today is a loaded question. With all that said, if you're going for all the gems in the game, my advice is for you to not do that. 100%ing Crash 1 requires you to get every box gem in every level, and these worthless pieces of shit only appear by breaking every crate in these stupid hallways. An extra fun quirk of the original release of Crash Bandicoot is that checkpoint boxes save your level progress, but not the number of crates you've broken. What that means is, to get any one box gem, you have to break every crate in the level on one life. What do you get for putting yourself through this hell? Is anything worth it? So yeah, the level design is what really holds back the quality of this piece. All you can do is run, jump, and spin, so you're left with very simple interactions with the platforming that just doesn't perfectly mesh with Crash's movement. The game just asks for too much precision out of this orange freak show. Everything about the presentation is a standout, and if that's enough to hook you, you'll have a great time with this one. If you're looking for a platformer to really knock your socks off as a complete package, then Crash 1 wouldn't be the first game I'd recommend. In the end, whether you waste your time or not, you're still given the option to fight Cortex. The game will culminate in a middling boss battle that ends with us frying the Mad Doctor with his own balls and malevolent energy. They were no match for my spin. Cortex falls to his death, and Tawna shows up to thank Crash for rescuing her. The two ride this Zeppelin into the sunset as Cortex Castle burns to rubble behind them. Tawna was subsequently taken out back and shot twice in the back of the head. So we did all that for nothing, basically. Even before we hit the title screen, the team are flexing their muscles. The damn company logo is fun to watch in this game. The hell. This story begins right where the last one ended, with Cortex plummeting to the islands below. Fortunately for the Doctor, because he has cartoon skin and not the real kind, he doesn't burst like a balloon filled with organs upon hitting the floor. No, Cortex actually manages to land underground, where he discovers a special crystal tucked away down here. Cut to a year later, where Cortex has built an orbital laser powered by the crystals. This guy with a missile for a head tells his employer that the rest of the elusive purple slivers are located on the surface, but that they don't have any operatives left to retrieve them. According to the manual, this guy is Dr. N. Jin, a former defense physicist who had a lab accident that left the missile permanently embedded into his cranium. That sucks for him, but he should have been working on his now rather infamous Can I Stop a Missile by Being Ugly study. Cortex shoots back that his new lab assistant is a moron, and if they have no allies left downstairs, they'll just have to recruit an enemy. And if you need further proof that this game is art, the devs have enlisted the vocal talents of Clancy Brown to bring Cortex to life. Clancy Brown is one of the finest thespians of our generation, and his performance is absolutely captivating, as always. The enemy in question is currently napping, probably dreaming about that mad pussy he done slain in the previous game. The sister that is just here now tells us her laptop is out of AA's, which is not how laptops work, but whatever, Crash is a good big brother, so he goes to get some more. This opens us up to a short tutorial section to get accustomed to Crash's moveset, and we can take in all that's changed. Firstly, there are gameplay improvements I noticed right off the bat. Crash changed shoes and got some with actual treads this time, because he's much tighter in his movement and he doesn't go sliding off platforms anymore. The jump feels like it's also been tweaked a bit to give you more precision, but that could just be because of the extra frames of animation. Crash has even got some new moves. Now he can slide and belly flop. The belly flop is really only used to smash reinforced crates. Beyond that, it's just more efficient to jump or spin into things. But it is satisfying to faceplant into a bunch of clumped together boxes. That seems to be its main function. Nah, the slide is where it's at. It's an offensive move, meaning it makes you say slurs, but if you jump out of it, Crash will get some extra height. It's simple, but really adds to the feel of the game as you chain together moves to slide and hop your way across levels. Though we'll see more of how the devs take advantage of this expanded moveset as we go on. But the most immediate difference is all the nuanced animation we're able to see thanks to the Ghoul 2. Those cats really made the most of the extra frames and polygons. By God, everyone looks so sharp and squashes and stretches like a classic cartoon. I like the changes made to Crash's model, where those huge eyes start getting more of an emphasis and he cuts a sharper silhouette. For Christ's sake, Coco's hair sways as she bobs her head. This was on the original PlayStation, mind you. I don't know how you get closer to replicating traditional animation than what the team have pulled off here. Where before Crash just stiffly alternated between standing and walking, the man now has a bouncy idle animation to fill in those gaps and make him feel like a living, breathing character. It sells the fantasy that you're inhabiting a zany, animated creature that remains zany and animated independent of our inputs. This presentation basically sets the bar for what a game could look like on the hardware back then. And by those standards, this is an astoundingly realized vision. Our trek back home is cut short, however, and Crash is vaporized and then put back together in this warp room. It's here that Cortex radios in and tells us he needs our help and that we're to grab the 5 crystals located in each of the levels laid out before us. He gives some concocted explanation later, but can I ask, why the ruse if you were just going to kidnap me anyway? It's not like I'm going anywhere without these things. This is actually a big character moment for Crash. You wouldn't know it by looking at him, but he's currently 6 weeks sober from a crippling Wumpa dust addiction. In fact, let's pause for a moment here to really analyze that facet of Crash's character and how it informs his arc moving forward. Consciousness gives us more weight than we can carry. And granting us the universe of thought that makes us who we are, this evolutionary gift also opened the door to untold woes. Knowing the horrors of nature's cannibalistic rituals is our burden and ours alone. Most of us get by simply ignoring the weight is there. We distract ourselves moment to moment and hold on to made-up values that we plaster together to save us when the distractions fail. But for some of us, those distractions taste like ash. It isn't our fault. Least of all Crash's, who would have been but another peaceful automaton in this spinning feast of pain if not for Cortex evolving him to our level of understanding, where he is given the same curse but without the anchorings of humanity to keep him going forward. For Crash, life is nothing more than hopping and spinning his way through a world he was ripped from, and that would be enough for him if he didn't have his new brain. In truth, boredom is the poison that leads so much of us to turn to chemical alterations to make this ceaseless white noise sound a little livelier. And for a while, those were the habits Crash fell back on. While using his vice of choice, Crash felt truly alive in a way he couldn't muster on his own. But nature is exceptionally cruel, and she won't allow her victims to veer too far away from the prison of our own heads. And soon Crash's chemical dependence also came with a chemical tolerance. It took more and more, and harder doses of Wumpa dust to achieve the fleeting high that, at this point, Crash felt was more him than anything else. All this changed not more than 6 weeks ago, when Crash finally got reason to pull himself together and leave behind the vices that defined his days. This is being tested. It's one thing to be made to go on another wacky adventure, but to do so at the behest of the progenitor of all agony in your world? This will be a task unlike any Crash has been made to face before, and it will take all his will to keep him from backsliding on the progress he's made so far. Anyway, returning to bullshit I didn't make up, the first of those 5 stages is Turtle Woods, a fun, straightforward platforming level that lets us get more intimately acquainted with the controls. The spin remains incredibly satisfying, and paired with Crash's new moveset, we're starting to feel like we have a versatile toolkit that lets us tackle the level design in fun ways. Though Crash's jump took some feeling out for me. It always moves in a perfectly conveyed arc through the animation, but it still isn't very precise. As for the level itself, Turtle Woods is real solid, giving us a burst of fun as we feel out all the ways this marsupial can move. Next, we take a trip to our first ice level, Snow Go. This is, surprise surprise, an actually fun ice level. The devs have pulled this off by, firstly, using those slippery ice physics sparingly, and we spend a good chunk of the level in this 2D section. But those physics pair really well with the moves Crash already has for pushing forward momentum. Slide jumping off these patches of ice is exhilarating. It was pretty mean to introduce nitro boxes in the stage with slippery floors though. These are a new type of crate you'll see peppered throughout the levels. Normal boxes hide fruit or extra lives, but there's also TNT boxes that will count down to a big boom if you nudge one too aggressively. Those nitro boxes, on the other hand, are new to Crash 2 and will vaporize you upon contact. This is why whoever decided to put them in the ice level hates you. Moving on to a more tropical climate, Hang 8 gives Crash a chance to show off how good he is at not falling off a jet-powered surfboard. I wanted to highlight this level because it was here I felt Crash's movement and the level design gel the best. They complement each other the most in scenarios where Crash is made to constantly push forward, and the real electrifying moments of the platforming is in those split-second movement decisions from the rock-solid kit you're given. On to the pits, where we expand upon the earlier woodland aesthetic by thinning out the platforms and adding bottomless pits. A fun tweak to the level design that requires more precise movement. However, this level can be added to the bottomless list I'm compiling called Things That Upset Me. It's chronological, so the pits went right between people who have children and dogs that maul babies. The pits made it on the list because it's the first level where backtracking is required to nab the box gem. Yep, these things are back. And you don't have to break every crate all in one life anymore. They left in a phenomenal reason to still not give a rat's ass about them. Breaking every box can be about as fun as solving a Rubik's Cube with broken fingers. That's a dangling modifier. Your fingers are broken, not the cubes. In the case of the pits over here, you have to backtrack against the camera after this fork in the road that only serves to make getting this box gem unnecessarily frustrating. Doing this in the 2D section is fun because you can see the route you'll have to take and can plan accordingly. The challenge is in the execution. The camera doesn't appropriately compensate for your backtracking through the 3D section though, and so you have to walk backwards at a snail's pace so you don't run into an enemy or walk off a ledge. See why I never bother with the gems, even for box completion? And this is just the start of it. Crash 2 makes you work for these stupid things, and as a lazy person, I simply refuse. This game changes into one that likes to put its cigarette out on your testicles the second you want to see that completion percentage start going up. With all that said, it was here I noticed my life counter tallying up. The game showers you with extra chances, implicitly telling you that you're gonna screw up, and that's okay. Experiment until you can push forward, past all you need to, in a beautiful sequence. I wish real life was like that, instead of your failures cementing your identity in the eyes of people who are primed to hate you. I put that on my brother's graduation card. The final level of this set is Crash Dash, showcasing a returning gimmick from the first game in the Boulder Chase. It's the same reactive platforming you've been doing, though now the game has complete control of the pace, and working within the framework of that design is a fun challenge. You can even see Crash occasionally look back in horror, on top of a unique set of bouncy animations that work to flesh out the unforgettable Crash 2 experience. With 5 crystals collected, Cortex Radio is back in to warn us that there are those who would stand between us and those things every woman I've ever dated thinks decide the future. He tells us to be ready on our way to the next warp room, for that is where our enemies will strike. With that, Crash takes the elevator up to our first boss. It's Professor Ripperoo, the most relatable character in the Crash franchise to me, but only because I too have been in a straitjacket. This is a riff on a boss from the first game, though the design is much more fun here. The pace has been cranked up, and you're now avoiding a more bombastic enemy on a flat plane as he hops around, spawning exploding boxes. It forces you to read him closer than you did before, timing where you'll stand while avoiding this erratic academic. It's nothing too crazy, but it's a fun movement challenge. I like Ripperoo. Unfortunately for the professor, he is not immune to explosions. That makes spawning exploding boxes kinda dumb on his part, and so I question the value of his diploma. Regardless, the boxes he spawns take him out if you can survive his hopping onslaught. But there's a real tragic undercurrent to Ripperoo's character, if you're mentally unstable enough to read it. You see, Ripperoo was another victim of the Evolvo Ray, and his genetics were unfortunate enough to give that evolved consciousness a disorderly self. Trapped inside his own head, thoughts barraged Ripperoo with a constant ferocity, and he was unable to focus those gnarly new sensations that fed him stimulus after stimulus, more information than he could read. The poor fellow turned a lump of dust almost as soon as he was free. It was a stimulant that helped narrow his field of thought and calm the storm clouds that streamed constant noise into his unquiet mind. If they stormed far away, for now Ripperoo could keep his eyes only where he wanted them. We all know how stories like this end. Dependence turned crippling, and after a while Ripperoo decided he was tired of feeling the way a chemically dependent feels. He got his life together, found a passion in the sciences, and so became motivated to get his GED, go to college, and finish with a PhD in record time. He accomplished all that, and could now look himself in the mirror and know for certain him at his best is not him when he's using. That, however, is not where our story ends. It's the unfortunate truth of living with an addiction. Even after all you've achieved, there are stretches where staying on the wagon is a lunch pail, day in, day out job. It certainly isn't enjoyable. It's just work. And poor Ripperoo wanted a break. And that's what we catch him in the middle of. It's certainly unsettling for Crash, who had heard through the grapevine of Roo's progress. The two were never close, but it was a comfort to know someone from that time was able to pull themselves together. Now Crash walks the straight and narrow on his own, and seeing a fellow dependent slip back into old comforts so easily only makes temptation scream even louder in his mind. He humps the air to clear his thoughts before being sucked away to do more of Cortex's dirty work. One of the reasons Crash is having such a hard time keeping clean is that his relationship with himself is on shaky ground. Being torn from a world without a concept of individuality into our nightmare circus that demands identity sent him spiraling. He had to find out who he was, occupying a space that was uniquely his in this world of Frankenstein values, a position that made his being ache with loneliness. There was the bind. Crash could not find himself alone, yet by his very nature he alone could find himself. It was an impossible task, burdened with the pains of excavating meaning in a naturally meaningless landscape, and the shaking tremors of abandonment from anything that could understand. The only way out, it seemed, was the Wumpa dust. With it, his entire identity could be wrapped around a singular moment of ecstatic sensation. He need not worry about anything beyond the sensuous concerns of the inescapable present. He need not be anything but a wacky cartoon. Would you take that out? Crash gets spit out into the second warp room, and this is where Cortex finally spins his yarn. According to him, the planets will soon be in alignment, and this will create an energy surge capable of obliterating the Earth. Luckily, the crystals can supposedly contain this energy. We just need to bring him 20 of them. Coco manages to piggyback off of Cortex's signal to send her own transmission, where she warns us not to trust the guy. It appears she's not buying the ruse, and to be fair, I don't think Crash is either. I think he just goes where you point. With that, the second warp room is open to us. Now that we've seen most of the level aesthetics and their gimmicks, we'll start to explore how the devs iterate on that foundational design. Take Snowbiz first. We're getting more of those ice physics, but this time in conjunction with bottomless pits. We're also expanding on the obstacles you'll find in the 2D sections. One of those expanded obstacles is a fresh new enemy in this wandering porcupine, and it's here I wanted to make note of how smart the enemies have been designed throughout Crash 2. You essentially have 3 offensive options: jumping on an enemy, spinning into an enemy, or sliding into an enemy. But hardly any of the creatures we senselessly murder can be taken down by all 3. You have to be able to react to an approaching mook with the appropriate attack, or be able to read their behavior to know when you can attack at all. It keeps you on edge, and makes what could otherwise be a very simple kit of attack options into something that feels vast and versatile as you're made to mix and match how you'll hurt things on the fly. But all the returning level gimmicks are slightly tightening your margins for error the more we progress. Air Crash is an exhilarating level, for instance, because of the way your forward momentum is once again pushed across a bottomless pit. Though now we have to hop across tiny moving platforms, so the level has a quick pace built into it. This is paired with enemies sprinkled about in places that force you to make tight jumps before quickly getting out of spin. The tightening of design feels very rewarding to overcome here. The river levels are my favorite design of the game so far. However, Air Crash also illustrates how hunting for gems can be a kick to the nuts. You're given a strict time limit to hop back through a section you boarded past to land on a platform that will take you to a secret route with a gem at the end. Again, an optional challenge for those that really want it, but I'm only so masochistic towards anything I'm not dating. On top of the refinement, we also get some new level themes. Some are more aesthetical, like this sewer in the eel deal. But even then, this aesthetic comes with its own set of design expectations, since we're presented with gnarlier enemies in the claustrophobic spaces that make up the stage. Or these ceilings we're made to dangle from, neutering our slide. Those tight rooms that force tighter movement makes the eel deal the toughest stage from this early bunch. And then there's Barrett, an auto runner that has us blazing forwards, and with different handling that forces you to radically alter how you approach the design. The bear turns wide as hell, so you've got to react to changing terrain way faster than normal to account for that. And that's where the fun of the level comes in. The limited control is enhancing the experience. This is another returning level gimmick from the first game, but here the movement challenges feel more expansive and better tuned to the bear's control. Our baby bear friend will even chill with us in the warp room when he's not being used as a car. He's got a rough home life. I'm glad he was able to find a surrogate father figure in Crash. But check this out. God rewards cruelty. What is human life, if not a set of distractions? Make sure to stay focused on your goals and be ready to swap them out the second one is achieved. For achievement is not the end in and of itself. The real goal of having goals is only to kill time. And when those distractions fail, we turn to other notions we made up and act like they're as natural as the trees. After all, you can always fall back on your family, your nation, or your God. Unless you're Crash. Can you imagine it? We cannot create belief from thin air, and your beliefs only become your reality when other people agree. All the virtuous traits you think are you were only there because someone else told you they were. For a rejected science experiment stuck in a limbo between worlds, this was out of the question. I bet I can guess the answer some of you are posing. If Crash can't believe in fictions, why can't he settle on what's real? Can't our purpose be to see and nothing more? What the hell is worth seeing? The natural world only tantalizes you because we're so far removed from it, but it's the only world Crash knows, and now he's clearly separate. Those beaches that bring you calm are Crash's backyard. Beautiful and serene, sure, but is that how Crash is obligated to feel? Nothing obligates him to feel at peace in nature's sideshow, where every sublime image is tainted with the knowledge he now has. The knowledge that there is nothing more than this festival of chaos forever. His spirit tells him there should be more, and if not, the beauty of the sand should be enough to justify his existence. But his brain reminds him, you are nothing in a sea of nothings, doomed to do nothing until nothingness reclaims you. Spin, hop, whatever. You can't outrun that desire for more. A desire Crash did not ask for, but is baked into his brain. The sands are not enough, but still he exists. And without our made-up values, Crash did not know what he existed for. The tragedy, of course, is that he could do nothing but exist. One can't escape that while still being them. Not without chemical help, anyway. After beating the second warp room, Cortex radios in to warn us of an upcoming boss. The boss in question is the Komodo brothers, and they foolishly think they can outspin Crash Bandicoot, of all people. This boss isn't as fun as Ripperoo, and it's not like the kangaroo bastard was super engaging to begin with. I mean, outside his lectures. But the Komodo bros end up being pretty boring. The test to your movement is more forgiving here, and the challenge is less interesting as a result. Despite the smaller arena, it's easier to predict and dodge this spinning lizard than it was to react around Ripperoo's hops. After beating those animals I've seen swallow goats whole, we're treated to more of Clancy Brown's outstanding performance. They should have put, "We have Clancy Brown now" on the back of the box. We've again been spat into another warp room, and I wanted to take a second to appreciate the detail on display here. Not only does each warp room have its own design and aesthetic, but the levels even bleed out of their entrances to make each portal a distinct representation of every stage. Care to that degree denotes a clear artistic craft going on in those Naughty Dog offices. Detail has just been lovingly and intricately painted across all corners of this canvas, and it all comes together to create a whole so much greater than its individual parts. It's in this warp room that I was starting to feel the challenges get a little pointier. The fun of a cozier stroll is gone, but getting the hang of that extra challenge and falling into a tighter rhythm of gameplay is very rewarding. And it's not like the devs are strapping you to a wheelchair and kicking you down a flight of stairs here. The levels themselves are all paced out really well in terms of escalating challenge. Consider the strategic Aku mass placement spread throughout sewer or later, being just forgiving enough to encourage you to push forward without diluting the challenge. We're also still iterating on returning level themes. Take plant food, for instance. Another jetboarding level, though now we have to platform and clear the rout of enemies before we can tackle the board section proper. Or Unbearable, a chase level that forces us to destroy parts of the level as we run. And although we do return to previous gimmicks, the devs have applied fresh coats of paint to each revisit. In Bear Down, we ride our extra life dispensary again, though this time at sunset, as we're bathed in the soft pink hues of a sinking sun. Returning to Unbearable, the boulder has been replaced by a mama bear who caught our scent and stalked us all the way from the ice caps. Or she floated over here on a melting glacier. My point is, even when the mechanics don't change, the devs are making sure we don't feel like we're just getting more of the same. All that, and we still get a brand new level aesthetic and road to ruin. This flavor of stage is more platform heavy than some of the previous ones, as we hop along towering stone pillars colored with moonlight. I absolutely love the atmosphere up here. But you may note that's 5 out of 5 levels in the can, which means we can now hop on this elevator that leaves us liable to getting jumped. In this case, we're assaulted by Tiny Tiger. He may look imposing, but he's outsmarted by Crash Bandicoot, if that tells you anything about the IQ we're working with here. This is more engaging to me than the sword-tossing dipshits from earlier, but only because the threat of death is higher if you're bad at reading the room. And I performed the aristocrats joke in my mother's eulogy. So yeah, this one was harder. You have to form routes along falling platforms to not only keep yourself alive, but to trick Tiny into hopping to his death. These platforms fall quicker as the fight progresses, which gives Tiny 3 chances to not do the same thing again, but he's apparently too proud to take them. Honestly, I die in between the phases more than anywhere else. And hey, in my humble opinion, the nutty professor back there is still king of the morons, because my brain somehow felt the most active during his boss fight. After 3 failed attempts at taking my jugular, Tiny falls to his death, and his corpse gets dumped into the vacuum of space. After that, we're dumped into Warp Room 4, the mines. Adrenaline is coursing through the veins of our Bandicoot hero, for it seems that with each new warp room he gets further away from that beach where Coco lies, desperately trying to reach us deep within Cortex's twisted maze of crystal scavenging. And as the challenge starts to put my face to the fire, the howls of his own thoughts grow even greater in the rapidly spiraling mind of Crash Bandicoot. I mean, how many near-death experiences can this guy take before turning back towards instant comforts? It's a question Crash is asking himself, and the answer may come to haunt him for the rest of his days. I'm starting to really feel the difficulty now, as this room full of lost miners challenges me through the level design in ways prior worlds didn't. Let's go through it. The sewers return to raise my cortisol levels and hanging out, with stretched out sections of dangling, and enemies packed closer together than my uncle's family when they told me how much coffins cost. I worked for that box gym. Then there's Cold Hard Crash, whose 2D sections are back with a vengeance, where now you slip and slide past crushers that rhythmically hammer the ground. And the enemies are once again there to make you consider which tool to use from the toolkit to avoid going to that great big evangelical nightmare in the sky. At least Crash knows for sure he's not going to the other place. My favorite of the bunch is once again the Sky Temple level, Ruination. All the same design elements are back, but tuned just slightly to be more challenging, in much the same way as Hanging Out. I just think the crumbling pillars above bottomless pits forces a tighter rhythm. But both of these continue to iterate on previous levels to create something more difficult, and as they do that, I feel like I'm being forced to attune myself to play exactly as intended to get me through these levels. Here's what I mean. I believe this all stems from the most basic of all interactions with the level design, the thing that makes or breaks that game feel crap in a platforming protagonist. The jump. These are situations where you're forced to get very intimately familiar with Crash's control. His jump is on the heavier side and lacks precision, but the level challenges have been designed around that particular movement, making every time you crack the timing and hop across a stack of boxes or nail a pesky chain of enemies feel satisfying as hell. It's like slotting in a puzzle piece to a picture you know the general outline of, but now you get the satisfying experience of finally building it and feeling the results. The level design is the outline, your jump is the slotting in, and the satisfying experience is landing the jump. Does that make any sense? Sometimes I feel like I'm what happens if you shove the critic Linkara Spoonie and Ted Kaczynski's rotting corpse into that teleportation machine from The Fly. I don't know what makes sense anymore, man. I just want to die. Digging It also offers a bit of fresh challenge as we return to the cool mountain air to dodge plants spitting explosives as we walk along thin, boost pad-ridden platforms. But the real shake-up comes when Crash decides to say fuck it and take that left turn at Albuquerque, digging just below the surface to protect himself from nature's grenade launchers. Everything about his world suggests Crash might not be better off heading downstairs after all. I like the music of Behaven, a level that builds on Digging It later in the Warp Room. It's very pleasant. And I figured now is as good a time as any to drop my uneducated thoughts on this soundtrack as a whole. It has just the right amount of energy, teetering on the edge of ambient during the more platform-heavy levels, but keeping a bright and colorful energy in the instrumentation. You get to the chase or auto-running levels though, and composer Josh Mansell lets loose with those threatening horns to get your ass on the move. Each track has a varied bombast that feels appropriate to each theme, but all have a cohesive musical identity that works to form a major part of Crash's own identity as a character and a series. Ultimately, the challenge of this section works because mastering the level design is so rewarding, and the game is never unfair about letting you approach the problem as much as you need, giving you ample lives and mercifully spaced out checkpoints throughout each new, challenging level. Plus, I'm not going for 100%, so I can remember these levels fondly. As I adjusted to the difficulty and gained more confidence, so too did Crash. He began to feel oddly at home in these levels, becoming attuned to the way the world timed its crumbling to ruins around his box jumping. Suddenly he was close to achieving, well, not a high, but a state of peace, riding the razor's edge and landing those jumps in just the right ways. Now narrowly avoiding danger became a rush instead of a constant fear, as the rhythm of danger became more intuitive. He felt far away from that self that needed the dust to become something more. He felt like laughing in the face of that angry voice telling him that he needed to be at his worst to handle life. Here he stands, grinding himself into the perfect blade to cut through platforming obstacles between him and that crystal. It no longer occurs to him that he could, at any point, take one of those 20 crystals we've collected and crumble it beneath his shoe, priming it for that sweet torment Crash is trying to keep locked away in the chains of the past. Can I keep my Bandicoot buddy walking this tightrope of sanity? Well, we've established that the god of this cartoon world is a rotten bastard, so probably not, but I guess we'll see. Cortex can smell all the crystals he needs burning a hole in our ass wallet, so he chimes in to share with us some news. Apparently the hapless dumbasses and the kangaroo in the middle of a tragic burnout were sent by Nitrous Brio, the inventor of the Evolvo Ray that mutated Crash in the first place. Cortex claims Brio was the secret mastermind behind the machinations of Cortex Castle, forcing this yellow tube into helping him with his plans for world domination. Now he's at it again, and to stop him, Cortex needs those crystals. All we have to do is take the platform up to Cortex's space station and hand him over to N-Gin. What does the N stand for? The platform does indeed take us up to N-Gin, but instead of tossing those crystals his way, we start pelting him with fruit that also comes from our ass wallet. I don't have much to say about the boss itself. The movement challenges it throws at us towards the start are alright. The fight as a whole just goes on too long, and the novelty of throwing fruit at Peter Lorre gets tired quicker than his health bar drains. I mean, you're waiting so long while he attacks you, and on top of that, you've got to time your fruit throwing because he flickers in and out of being vulnerable to citrus. It gets to be annoying how long you have to cycle through the same set of these platforming challenges that, while kinda cool, are less so when I see them 50 times. The Peter Lorre reference is deeply appreciated though. These are clearly connoisseurs building this piece. Cortex is pretty pissed that we didn't hand over our crystals to a guy who shot rockets at us, and then demands we nab the remaining 5 and bring the full set his way. Too late, buddy. I'm an orange death machine that's in your house. When I collect those crystals, it'll only be because of arbitrary obligations put on me because none of us are real. Oh god, none of us are real. Why do we do anything? Anyways, let's start by investigating the final batch of new level gimmicks and see what fresh ideas the team are throwing at us even this late in the game. We start in Night Fright, a return to the jungle, where interwoven fingers of gargantuan trees block even the thinnest slivers of moonlight, and we can only see when followed by a firefly friend. This is a fun riff on the jungle levels, since those firefly friends are fickle bitches and will scatter after they finally get a whiff of your pheromones and realize bandicoots eat fireflies. That means you've got a zip through level design you can once approach as slowly as you'd like. And that may be asking a lot for some people, if not for this challenge being at the end, with our skills honed and our natural pace quickened. I like it. These other ones can kiss my ass. They're jetpack levels, rocket and pack attack. Were they at 23 of these romps and then ran out of development time, so they built a gimmick that moves so awkwardly I feel like I'm going through puberty again? It's awkward because you carry forward momentum after letting go of the D-pad, making precise movement an idiot's dream. Rocket had some fun moments once I adjusted the control scheme and I tried to carry that forward momentum as fast as I could without getting evaporated. Pack Attack asks you to tackle way too much with said control scheme, between the level design forcing tight corners on you and attacking enemies narrowing your path even further. I cannot imagine going for the box gym again with these controls. Yeah, I got all the gyms on the Insane Trilogy back in high school. I'm a veteran. But even with save states, I get far more satisfaction from a straight playthrough, where I'm not forcing myself to endure design I find frustrating for, spoilers, a cutscene at the end. Not worth it. Regardless, the levels that really liked hurting me were the ones in Cortex's spaceship. Can I just say, this lazy bastard could ask for 18 crystals if he would just walk the 100 yards or so and pick up these damn things. Oh, I'm sorry, is that too dangerous for you? Jackass, you built the place. Alright, these levels take the 2D sections to their limits in terms of difficulty. These weird new enemies and piston it away force an extra level of strategy when engaging them, since some alternate between which attacks will hurt them. There's also new platforming challenges in said pistons and the shrink rays that will shoot projectiles when activated. The level is doing more to tighten the margin for error, doing more to dictate its own pace. And Spaced Out takes the pure platforming even further, forcing you to deal with those new enemies in spaces made tight by nitro boxes. This level shaved my eyebrows with sandpaper, just because of how much it asks you to react to if you're trying to keep your rhythm going. I got this video game protagonist violently acquainted with explosive boxes and searing hot machinery so many times it felt like I was doing something morally wrong. Crash and I were at our limits. Him more so than me, on account of him actually being the one getting buzzsawed to death. Can you imagine how tempting it was out there? He thought he had found some natural out, a way for him to reconnect to a world that came close, so close to what he was before the science of man expanded his mind. It wasn't the same, but it was close enough. For a few levels, our polygonal marsupial could block out those thoughts of his now boundless interior, and be only what he was in the moment of jump and release. But here in this factory of pain, this wacky creation was forced to exert himself over and over again, once again separating him from the thoughtless bliss. He wanted an out, and there was one right in front of him. Those crystals sang a sweet song of forgotten comforts in Crash's lowest moment, begging him to return to destructive release that would shut out the screaming voices telling him how much this exertion, frankly, hurt. Can you see him now, holding the crystal in his hands, wondering, why, oh why, can't I just have this one thing to make it okay? He's smart enough to know the answer why. Another gift from Brio's machine. He was cursed by genetic chance to crave the dust as much as his body was destined to depend on it. And the poor bastard knew it could work if he had one chain or the other. But a faceless guide threw dice to make him, and out he came, a shackle on each wrist, keeping out of reach a perfect release from the searing ache of conscious movement. What reason did he have now, in the cold, uncaring depths of space, not to indulge? What difference would it make if Cortex took the crystals he wanted for whatever scientific disaster he's putting on, and we take just enough to get away? To finally, even for just a split, painless second, be free of the agonizing pressure of life itself. Cortex chimes in to gloat over us, his mocking laughter echoing in this dome, keeping us sealed away from the outside emptiness. He gloats that we're to thank for sealing his victory over all of planet Earth, and in our Bandicoot heart a hatred rises that dares us to dig our heels in the ground and say, "Fine, this straight and narrow business is a lost cause. Take these and let me be free." Then in chimes Coco. She once again is able to hijack Cortex's broadcast, and she hits us with the truth beneath the doctor's malicious spiderweb of lies. She warns us those crystals were going to end up powering the Super Cortex Vortex. One blast from that orbital laser will fry the brains of the planet's population, turning everyone on Earth into mindless drones obedient to Cortex's commands. So he's going to marry everyone on Earth. Coco begs us not to let that lab-coated monster have those crystals before the transmission is cut and we're left alone once again in this metal tomb. Here's the thing. 6 weeks ago, a little Bandicoot girl finally found the only other experiment of her kind. She had escaped from Cortex Castle before we rendered it cinders, and she spent the better part of a year hunting down Crash in between his chaotic burnouts. Crash had never expected to have something more than his own senses to cling on to, but here it was, a creature much like him that needed a big brother to guide her through this new gift granted to them by their birth father of consciousness. Suddenly, in the void, there was something to hold on to. Something outside himself that mattered more than how he felt in the moment. It was a colossal change, and a painful one, if we're honest. But he knew he had to navigate this world free of that awful cycle the dust had put him in. So he clung to her, gritted his teeth, and listened to an adoptive sister who, despite her younger years, was much smarter than her elder sibling. Crash was the brawn, always bouncing around and spinning out of his problems. That made Coco the brains, and Crash was thankful every day that he had that to lean on. It was her that funneled the truths he kept shunted away to keep walking the path that used to work so well. Because it was her that said them, Crash knew he had to relent. It was her voice that whispered in his ear now, as his eyes rolled over the crystal in his hands, his insides clawing their way out, making him so terrified of enduring them any longer. "I can't do this anymore," he says. "Let me go back to what works." And there Coco was, who pointed to the glaring facts on which Crash had drawn velvet curtains. "It worked until you needed more," she said to him softly in memory, in thought, and in spirit. For Crash, that was enough. It had to be. And that resolve is certainly going to be tested, because that elevator does indeed take you up to Dr. Neo Cortex. A jetpack level. Fuck. You have to chase down Cortex so you can pummel him before he escapes into this portal to Mexico. It isn't challenging so much as it is annoying, since you can spin into the obstacles to keep your momentum. It's just the movement that's an absolute pain in the rear, for aforementioned reasons that are still less aggravating here than in a full level. When all's said and done, the final boss is certainly underwhelming, which I guess is in keeping with the other bosses so far. Still, there's a special place in my heart for Ripperoo. It doesn't take too long to slip into the controls comfortably enough to spin into Cortex until he explodes and is jettisoned into space, probably bumping into Tiny's frozen remains on the way to, I guess, Mercury? I don't know. I only know 4 of the planets anyway. We're up for an underwhelming salad. Okay, so salad, I guess, because this ending is also kind of a fart in the wind. After beating Cortex, we cut to Crash and Coco lounging on the beach, with Coco making the remark that the Cortex Vortex is still floating up there. And that's where it's gonna stay, for my own mental health. Still, Coco will never know that she was our North Star. She'll never know that, tired and an orbital length apart, thoughts of her were the only thing that could keep us trudging along. The world be damned. It only mattered that we not disappoint our sister, who defined value in our world. She'll never know, because Crash is nonverbal. And then Crash thought of Cortex, this mustache-twirling villain with fiction's most genuinely horrendous hairline holy god who thought himself smart and deserving enough to rule over everyone in existence. But now Crash knew the truth. The kernel of reality Cortex had to slip in to make his fabrication seem legitimate. That big-headed bitch didn't even make the Evolvo Ray. So what a useless thing self-perception is, if you're looking through lenses that blur the reality around you. Here's what Crash realized. Who we are in reality is who we are when we're accepted by someone, flaws and all, and still the best version of us is the one that they picture. And for Crash, that was enough. It gets a hair too tough for its own good by the end, but god damn it, this is a finely crafted 3D platformer, and a major step up from its predecessor. Let's take the core platforming experience first, and note just how much better the level design here is. feels so much more varied. And yes, a lot of that has to do with Crash's new moveset, but by God, they crank a lot out of this moveset. It's simple on its face, but the level design forces you to constantly mix up how you interact with the terrain, and making those interactions at the increasing pace the game asks of you is damn satisfying to pull off. Then of course, there's the art and animation. What a fucking achievement. You don't feel its age, because the hardware at peak performance delivers exactly what the team set out to do. After all, let's return to Andy Gavin, who said they opted to create, quote, a game that tried to combine the gameplay of Mario or Donkey Kong Country with the animation and cartoon sensibility of a Looney Tunes or Tex Avery cartoon. I think they did it. All the subtle touches of traditional 2D animation seem to be represented in some PS1 facsimile here. Even when you're not touching the controller, the world moves, and so you feel like you're the star of a genuine Warner Brothers serial in motion. It feels like every inch of this tapestry has been sewn with expert care, leaving no detail unaccounted for. When you see each beautiful stitch come together to form something magnificent as a whole, you found something made with true artistic love and care. Because the tech is so well utilized, it's so much easier to slip into the position of a person playing this for the first time in 1998 and enjoy it as they would. That's a magical thing that not many pieces of art can accomplish. Is it too hard by the end? I think by a bit. I was certainly enjoying myself less, but if you told me it was an issue of skill on my end, I'm the last person to disagree with you. But who gives a shit? Our Bandicoot buddy is still on the wagon. And, through Coco's love, Crash realized that his best self could define him more than his lowest moments. And playing this game and experiencing Crash's journey by looking into the pain behind his eyes, I came to realize something too. You want to know what I realized? Any positive conception of our lives is only in our own heads. It's kind of terrifying, isn't it?